Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A video slash podcast. This is season 9, episode 54. If you're on the video right now, links in the description to access this on a bunch of podcasting platforms. I don't want to say all because I'm sure it's not all.
Oh,
but it's a lot.
Speaking of platforms, did you realize Spotify has bought out Anchor?
I did not realize that, no.
I noticed that the last week, I think, when I was uploading stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just, I had to log in again. I had to figure out what my login was.
Interesting.
It was odd.
Yeah. Spotify is, speaking of Spotify though, they have like the AI DJ thing that they're trying to roll out, which is weird. Have you seen that?
I have not.
They have like, it's supposed to be the next evolution of their...
Of getting rid of real people?
Well, no, of their like Discover Weekly kind of recommendation algorithms where... the DJ introduces themselves to you. It's an AI voice synthesizer, and they tell you kind of why you're about to listen to what you're about to listen to, and they give you a group of songs. So it's like, you know, hey, now I'm going to switch up the vibe. I'm going to give you something that's, you know, the songs that you keep playing on repeat. Or now I'm going to give you some, you know, like folk music, whatever, and I'm going to start you off with the Lumineers. Let's go. And then you can click a button, and it'll bring you back to the DJ, and he'll reshuffle sort of his style that he's trying to give you. So if you're like, I don't really want that, you can click it again and see what it gives you. And so it's sort of a mix of the recommendation algorithm with the synthesized voice, and then you know, you assume something maybe a little different going on under the hood to give you stuff. Right. But it's just supposed to be a new way to experience your music.
What I like recently was that the Shuffle Play, you have the option to let them mix in similar songs. So that it's like the suggestions, but integrated more to what you're actually listening to.
I think the algorithm is really interesting. They've done some good stuff and they've done some bad stuff. The other thing that Spotify is doing is that there's like a discover mode that creators can opt into, where they will have their songs have a boosted visibility, but in exchange for a 30% cut of the royalties in the playlists that they're putting you in for the boosted visibility.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I saw somebody talking about it, how it's essentially like a prisoner's dilemma, right?
Right.
And for anybody who's not familiar, prisoner's dilemma is this game theory thing where basically the idea is that you've got two prisoners, or two people who are about to become prisoners, and they've been caught for a crime, and your option is, if you don't say anything, you go to jail for a year.
Yeah.
If you both sell each other out, you go to jail for, 2 years, or 3 years, or whatever, because they know about all your crimes. But if only one gets sold out, the one person gets out for free, and the other person goes to jail for 10 years. And so the idea is that the best option for everybody, the lowest net option is to cooperate and work together. Yeah. But the best option is to screw over the other person.
Right, because it's just more likely.
And because the other person's option happens independently of them, if you don't screw them over, you either get really punished or a little bit punished. And if you do screw them over, you're screwed anyways.
Right.
So you either get no punishment or you get, still a lighter punishment than if they were rolling over on you, if they were telling on you.
Because I think for a lot of the less visible artists, the less popular artists, the biggest value of Spotify is
recommendation and the algorithm.
So more than just the money, because the money, from what I've heard, unless you're doing really big numbers, isn't enough to live on. So it feels like that they're offering you the most valuable thing
for some of your money
for not a lot of cost.
Yeah,
when you're small enough.
Yeah, and so the thing is that it's only increased visibility if you are doing it and other artists aren't, right? They're not putting more people on the platform. They're not having people spend more time listening to music.
Right.
They're not creating more attention to give you.
Right.
They're offering you a larger share of the attention.
Of that same pie.
Yeah. So you lose out if other people are taking the deal and you're not taking the deal.
Right.
If nobody takes the deal, then everything stays exactly the way it was.
Yeah.
And if everybody takes the deal, things stay exactly the way it is, but Spotify makes more money and the artists get less money.
Right.
So that's kind of not so good. And the other thing that's unfortunate is that, Spotify, a lot of record labels have stake in Spotify. And so when they're negotiating sort of the split for who gets the revenue from streams, they can afford to negotiate pretty low rates because all the people who are in positions of power are the labels, right? Individual artists aren't big enough to be at the negotiating table.
Right.
And the labels are basically debating with themselves. And so if you give Spotify a bigger cut, you know, the labels don't really care because it's their money either way, right? They're getting a portion of the money on both ends of it. And so you end up with a deal that really does not favor artists. Anyways, that's a little bit of my...
This week.
I both like Spotify a lot as a platform, as a user, and know that it's pretty terrible for artists. Yeah. But also, in the same point, it can be really good. It can be career-making for artists in the same way that, like, you know, YouTube as a platform can sometimes be really opaque and, you know, really screw people up and mess with people's livelihoods. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have any platform at all if it weren't for YouTube.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a good example of that for me is because I listen to basically pop. Yeah. I listen to it, what's at different times called, what is it? Soft rock. Yeah. Adult-oriented rock. Yeah. If they're trying to hide what it is. Or it's just adult-oriented pop. Or whatever, you know, like that kind of... And so surprisingly, I found a new artist that I really like. She's got a really interesting sound. It's like a slightly edgier pop, Gatlin. And she's small enough that she doesn't even have any like music merch. She's got like, I think some t-shirts or whatever. And I would love to buy some CDs. She has no CDs available to buy.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, CDs are becoming less and less of like a draw for people. Sure. No, less and less something people want to buy. And the problem is that if you're small enough, you have to buy the CDs and then store them in your house. Sure.
I totally get that. I think, though, as somebody who enjoys the music, even if I don't use the CDs to listen to, I like to have access to them. Yeah. Did I tell you that example? I must have said that, explained or told the story as an example where there's an artist. She was on The Voice, Wendy Moten. Yeah. And way back, like maybe 30 years back, she did the kind of music that I listened to. Yeah. And she has only one song on Spotify. And it's a song that was on a compilation album that ended up on Spotify. Yeah. I've got both of her other albums, and I've got her music, and the only way I can listen to it is because I have the CDs, I ripped it myself, and I put it on my own Spotify list. But this is a perfect example of, if it's obscure enough, there's a real possibility that you may not have access, or you lose access to it if you've already got it.
I think that one of the things that's happening increasingly with stuff now is I feel like when I was younger, my understanding of sort of the culture and perception of digital stuff was that now we were moving from a time where there was a bunch of lost media and stuff that would just come and go, and then there would be a certain amount of it out in the world, right? For media. And then it sort of just dwindled over time unless there were people who were working to, you know, store and restore it and keep it, you know, available. Right. And I had this sort of understanding and idea that there was going to be like a lack of sort of media scarcity now that we had sort of the internet, and that it was easy to store stuff, and that there would always be somebody having it. And I'm seeing more and more sort of lost media happening, right? Sure. You know, you look at game platforms like Steam where they like delist games, right? And they can like even like take them from your account, right? You look at all this like media that just isn't held and kept. And I think I mentioned this a while ago, but the understanding that there's all these platforms that have huge, vast stores of information like Facebook, where like an update to the UI can make information inaccessible or buried. That there's this huge amount of sort of data that is still stored on servers, that is still available, that is kind of in this like uncached internet, right? Where like a Google search won't necessarily show it to you, and you cannot view it in the way that you know, could in the past, right?
It may as well be not available for how hard it is to find.
Yeah, there's like an accumulation of like like feature changes and software changes, and, you know, websites falling through the cracks. And so like one of the interesting things is there's a talk of Internet Archive, certain media being removed because I think there's like a lawsuit being held against them by like ebook companies or like book companies because they have some ebooks on it. And so people, you know, are looking at it, and I've heard different people say different things, like, you know, it could, you know, if the lawsuit's big enough, they might go under, and a lot of people going, it's not going to be that bad. You know, the worst case scenario is that they're going to have to take a lot of their like ebook content off of it. Right. But, you know, websites like Internet Archive, I think, is genuinely one of the most valuable cataloging and like sort of historical record keeping like websites on the internet. I think the number of times that you and I have used it, right, to just find something, where you look at cached versions of websites, where you're looking like...
So we're talking about the way now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internet Archive hosts the Wayback Machine.
Right. Yeah, no, but I'm talking about that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
Where it's incredible kind of the amount of data that is...
I can give you a real example of that. So, I don't know anybody who's listening who watches Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah.
And way back when, the Disney Movie Insiders used to be Disney Movie Rewards. So, when you bought a Disney movie, it would come with these points that you could enter a code, you accumulate points, and you get rewards. One of the rewards was a Perry the Platypus as Agent P clocks.
Yeah.
So I was able to use the Internet Archive to look back to figure out when it was. Well, I had to get my receipt from ordering it. Then I went back to the site at the right time.
Yeah.
I could see the description. I was able to find out that it was a Disney Movie Rewards, exclusive.
Yeah.
How many points it cost, get a sense of how much points were worth, and also put it into the context of how exclusive it was, because it tells you that you couldn't get it anywhere else.
Yeah, so and you wouldn't have had access to any of that information.
Right. If you looked for that clock and found the right picture of it, Google gave me literally 2 hits. One was a Reddit thread of 2 posts where somebody was saying, hey, look at this cool thing. And somebody else said, oh, you wouldn't have an extra, would you? I said, no. It was just way back when it was too many points. And they were right. It was way too many points for what it was, but it was still really neat. Mm-hmm. And then I think there was an eBay listing that's long defunct where it shows you the picture. Mm. But when you go to the page, it's already gone. Like it's a specific picture. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. No, for sure. It's really neat. The fact that this even exists.
Yeah. And I think actually when I look at the sort of problems that I see with like the internet, and I look at like lost media, this data that's like not really available anymore. When I think about sort of what we're talking about as AI right now, which is just increasingly complex algorithms, right? Mm-hmm. Algorithms that you can sort of, instead of coding, that you can set in the general direction of an objective and then allow them to sort of iterate on themselves and achieve the objective.
Right.
I think one of the ways that I can see AI actually being incredibly useful is giving it the goal of scraping sort of the data that exists and coming up with the information that might be impossible to find via sort of a traditional search query, right? That kind of like, if you are a savvy internet user, you can use a combination of, the Wayback Machine and Google and refining your terms, maybe using the term Reddit to see if there's a thread of people talking about it instead of just looking for the words appearing somewhere. Right. The combination of like minuses and quotes to like narrow your search and stuff. And I can imagine that if you have a good enough algorithm to do that for you, you might be able to do a Google style query and have it retrieve the information you want from places that you might not have had any other way of accessing otherwise. Because the other thing that's interesting is Google is getting sort of increasingly degraded in terms of how useful the results are.
Well, they give more space to the ads now than they ever did before. That used to be the appeal of Google over Yahoo. One, it was automated, so it didn't require people to curate it. But 2, that when you got your hit, that was the most relevant thing.
Yeah. But the other thing is that there's like I've seen people talk recently, and I've experienced it when I was like looking up stuff for Persona, because I've been playing Persona 4 Golden, is like the recipification of like video game guides, where when you'll look up a tip or trick, you'll say, how do I do this? How do I do that? There's a lot of these sort of spammy websites that you've never really heard of before that have these long-winded explanations about the game and how well it sold and everything else on an article that's ostensibly answering your question.
Right.
And then sometimes the actual answer is at the end is going, there's no current way to do this, or we don't know, whatever.
Oh, it's like those clickbaity things on Facebook where they have like a little picture of something, and then it's not actually one of the cases.
But yeah, so I've noticed increasingly that it's harder to find information on games, and I think for a lot of stuff, Google can now serve you a lot of sort of SEO optimized, really weird kind of spammy content. Whereas I have this perception, and a lot of people have the perception of it being more direct and helpful at an earlier point. It's hard to know exactly what's responsible for this. change. But anyways.
Okay. Now, the benefit of having rambled for the first 15 minutes is you've all had a chance to see the gameplay.
If you're watching.
And what you're seeing is the Earth 2 Flash team. And I feel like this is like a great demonstration for why cards with, no matter how strong or powerful they are, that have a special 2 that can only knock out the opponent on the last hit, have very unique limitations and make them difficult to be really good on a team, to be the star of the team.
Yeah.
So Earth 2 Flash, really powerful special 2, but because it can only knock out on the last hit, any character that has a revive stops him in his tracks, requires you to make an adjustment. And even on this team with Hawkgirl, to make the tag-ins and tag-outs faster, you're just wasting so much time doing more special 2s than you need to, and also tagging out and tagging in. Because even a character where the special 2, there's at least, even if there's a chance that they knock them out, even if they don't do as much damage, if they can knock out the special 2 character, they knock out the opponent with the special 2. I'm totally, this has been a long day.
Yeah.
If you don't need to tag them out on a revive, it makes such a huge difference in how fast you can get through the fight. So, look, Containment Doomsday will stop Earth 2 Flash with a special 2.
Yeah.
Necron Scythe, Blackest Night Hawkgirl. So, your main high damage output character is stopped in his or her tracks. Earth 2 Flash, however, is one of the unique characters that can overcome it, and that's what you're seeing with this particular loadout. So, he has a passive that lets him create stuns when he comes in. That makes him the perfect person to use Cloak of Destiny and Necron Scythe. Because they stack, those can be 2 of his gears.
Yeah.
His special 1 has multiple hits. So, his third gear can be Tantu Totem, because with his multiple hits, and if it stuns, and it stacks twice, his special 1 can basically knock out anybody who does not have Astral Harness. So even if they got a revive, he's doing enough damage. Often, his first 2 hits will do the damage. And because his passive not only lets him stun, it also guarantees critical hits against stun characters. So you don't have to waste any slots maxing out his crit chance. And then, so he's boosted, he can knock an opponent, and that allows his teammate, in this case Static, to have Master's Death card to do specials, Claw of Horse to strip gears, and Static happens to be a character who can stun on a special 1 pretty consistently. And just to make it even a little bit more interesting, and you'll probably see a fight later on where we're sort of really leveraging the strategy by giving Static Enchantress companion gear. You are effectively disabling the opponent's specials, and it allows you enough time with the Hawkgirl to tag in and tag out so quickly that a whole team that's building up. So when you see this team fight against a Red Sun Green Lantern team, and we don't do enough damage, like ever, because they don't get stunned, they don't take crit damage. This is like throwing pebbles at like a snowplow, trying to stop it from running you over. But the cool thing is, we actually stop them from doing anything to us while they've got 2-3 bars of power over and over again, just back and forth, little bits of damage, and we still knock them out. And it doesn't take nearly as long as it probably should, considering how much our team relies on boosted stun damage, which we cannot do against the Red Sun Green Lantern team.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Are we ready to move on to sort of the first batch of comments?
Yeah, I think the first few are going to be really interesting, only because they're a response to the question we asked last week.
Yeah, so we were sort of talking about how the social element of games adds to them and is important to them, and how, an increase in complexity can sometimes necessitate a certain amount of community participation to get the most enjoyment out of a game.
Right.
And I was talking about that in the context of Persona 4, and we asked people to sort of ask about when they found our channel and when they were playing Injustice, and sort of why they found our channel, right? Why they sought us out, whether it was because they felt like they were missing something or needed something else to enjoy it or not.
Right.
And one of the things I want to say that's funny is I have two main friends who recommended Persona to me. And I just realized that one of them technically beat the game, but missed out on a huge amount of content. So there's, Persona 4 and then Persona 4 Golden, which was the sort of remaster re-release version. And in Golden, there was a bunch of extra content added on at the end. And my friend missed all of the Golden content and also hit like a bad... It's hard to say because the ending that he described is not one of the possible endings of the game, according to the internet. So he missed between 2 and 3 of the dungeons, a huge amount of sort of dialogue and story and stuff. And depending on whether his sort of half-remembered ending is true, he either hit like one of the earliest endings and like the bad ending, or he hit sort of like an intermediate one and still missed out on like a bunch of stuff. Funny. And so it's funny because this person was like, oh, this game's really good, this game's really good. And the game is still really good, but he missed out on this huge chunk of stuff that I have kind of sprawling ahead of me still. And the only reason that I'm going to experience it is because the other person who recommended it to me said, basically, go in blind. Here's the stuff you can look up. Here's the stuff you can't look up. I'll give you sort of tips here and there if you have any questions. And then when you get to this point, and it'll be clearly signposted, that it'll say something like, you need to like prepare yourself or whatever, like beyond this point, big things are going to happen or something like that. And then at one point a message pops up on my screen that says basically that. And she said, look up how to get the good ending, because a lot of it is pretty arbitrary and it's very easy to miss if you don't sort of know what you're supposed to do. And I'm partway through that. I'm in sort of the thick of that, and I totally agree. I would have probably missed some of like the dialogue choices I needed to make, some of what I needed to do, and I would have missed out on a bunch of stuff if it weren't for this person who let me know. So I think that my experience of the game, and then my other friend is just like, oh yeah, I never looked up any guides. I just played it, and I had a good time with it. And I was able to sort of get the best of both worlds, where I wasn't constantly glued to a web page, or a guide, and having my experience really spelled out for me. Because one of the things is that some conversation options offer like slight incremental benefits over others. So I could spend a guide every time there's any option to have them tell me what the perfect thing to say was. But then also in the same thing is that sometimes you do need to look up what to say, because if you say the wrong thing, the game ends like 5 hours early and you miss out on a bunch of extra content. So it's an interesting balance of stuff. And for me, I needed somebody telling me what the best way to play it was. Otherwise, I would not have played it the best way at either part of the game.
Do you feel like maybe that's true even with a game like Injustice 2? Because if somebody doesn't tell you early on, don't max out all your characters, focus on the gears, back off on trying to promote everybody to max. Because that, I feel like that is a way to spoil the experience of playing the game, where you end up
having a harder online experience.
Until you have a really difficult online experience. And if you never get to it, then you don't get to realize that your online experience improves when you get all the gears and max them all out.
I think that there's still a huge amount of content and enjoyment to be had even without that piece of advice. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where like it's the same way my friend, didn't get any of that advice, didn't look up any guides, and still had a really great time. He just missed out on a lot.
Yeah, and you don't even need it. And in terms of Injustice, you don't even need a guide. You just need somebody to say, don't max them out.
Slow down,
get the gears, focus on the gears, spend your money on the gears, spend your time on the gears, shatter, get the shards, do all that stuff.
And so I think that segues really wonderfully into the comments from the viewers telling us about how they found us and why and when they started playing. So first one comes from Bobby Platehead, and I say first, these are in no particular order. They say, I just recently downloaded Injustice Mobile again. I used to play a lot casually back in the day, but ever since I found your channel, I've been doing a lot better in my strategy and team building, so thanks, from a new viewer. So this is somebody who found it back in the day. I'm assuming that it was a lot more simple.
Found the game.
Found the game, us, and then found us recently. They're a new viewer.
So they didn't know they needed us until they found us.
Yeah, so that there's been some sort of benefit from it, but it was not important to their experience of it. But they found it, they played it, they enjoyed it, and now they're coming back to it, and they found us. Next one comes from Think Rice GNS, and they say, I'm pretty sure I started playing around maybe 2015 or 2016. I do remember the reason I was looking around in the community was for glitches, and I'm pretty sure I commented on one of your vids way back asking for help. I never really needed to have anyone tell me how to have fun because I was pretty satisfied using Prime Flash to beat up everyone with a heavy combo and Regime Catwoman for a light combo. I just had fun because they attacked quick, and I never got far enough in to really play around with gears and stuff for strategy.
Can I stop though?
Sure.
That is me. I like the fast, basic attacks. They are the best. That is the reason why I played so much with the Flash. And I spent so much time grinding right at the beginning with Bronze Flash in Bonus Battle 1. That's totally me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only complaint I had back then was having to wait for my team to recharge because I didn't like using the other characters since they were so slow. I've recently gotten back in and kind of sad to see the game gone so long without any updates, but the devs really made a good game for it to stick around this long and be able to hold me after so many years. I definitely couldn't believe this channel stayed on that game for all this time. Really glad you guys are still around and the content is really great. So this is another person.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Awesome comment. I like, actually, this is somebody who came and went with the game and, you know, found us back then for glitches, which I think was the main way that anybody found us initially. That was where we had most of our sort of views and
most of the
activity on our channel.
Most of the subscribers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I think glitches is one of those really sort of interesting and important things for this game, especially because I think there were some glitches that trivialize some elements of the game, and I think if you use them too early, the game might have been a lot less fun and satisfying for you. And then there were some glitches that I think were so important to our enjoyment of the game, and that the game would have just been less good and less compelling and less able to hold on to us. It's specifically stuff like the challenge reset glitch was necessary. Oh, yeah. And then a lot of the credit glitches hit us at a point where we'd already put in like 100 hours or hundreds of hours.
I want to tell a funny story about the challenge reset.
Sure.
There was a week where I can't remember what it was, and I was on my own. Yeah. Everybody else was out of the house. I had nothing else to do. This was right at the beginning.
And you gave yourself repetitive strain injury?
I gave myself golfers and tennis elbow. Yeah. From doing the glitch over and over again and playing for hours, just grinding the challenge. Yeah. And I just because that low level, low intensity stuff. Yeah. And if you see the videos, I mean, listen, I am not. My hands are strong. I'm not weak by any means. Yeah. But I ruined myself. Yeah. For a couple of weeks after. I believe it would have been either the Wonder Woman 600 challenge. Yeah. Or the original Apocalypse. Because you're just like, challenge.
I gotta do it while I have it.
I gotta do it while I have it. Who knows how long this is gonna last? I need to generate resources and have more power credits.
All these years later, it's gone.
It is gone now, actually, after years and years. And who knew I wouldn't have needed to really hurt myself like that? But, yeah, I mean, yeah.
You didn't know.
I did not know.
Yeah, and so that sort of speaks to how we found it, too, because we first found it looking for a fix when my challenge didn't work. Because I opened the challenge before I updated the game, and I had glitched out my challenge. Right. And that was sort of the first time that we consciously engaged with sort of the online injustice community, was to try to find a fix.
And so our origin story time... So when I look stuff up, there's people who describe, like, lay out the steps. Yeah. The problem is most people take certain things for granted. Yeah. And they don't state them explicitly. And it might be clear in their head. They might be doing it in their when they're doing their challenge reset, but they're not showing it. So the start of this was doing the glitches in real time. People could follow along literally exactly what we're doing and make really clear where you could deviate from it in a way that would mess up how the glitch would work.
So we were trying to do just a better version of those initial text tutorials, sort of refined, and with some of the steps cut out that turned out to not be important, and sort of the best version that we could figure out.
Right, and explanations for how you could do it wrong. What were common sort of, there's a word, the
pitfalls, mistakes.
That's it, pitfalls that people run into when it's not working for them. So that was us too in another way. That was us that was me every way.
Yeah. And so our last comment, sort of responding to this directly, comes from Cameron107, and they say, to answer your question, I started in 2014, so there wasn't any part of this game that was too complicated initially, but I periodically took long breaks from the game, and I wasn't actively playing when gears or medals were introduced. That's what led me to your A Study in Gears series. I was aware of your channel before, but this is when I seriously started watching. And so this is sort of what we're talking about, where feeling like you're missing something, right?
Right.
Gears are there. All of a sudden, there's this whole extra layer of input, and you have all of your stuff. But it's like when you leave a game and come back to it, a lot of times you lose that sort of flow state. You lose that continuity and that immersion.
Yeah.
And then once you're out of it, it can be kind of hard to get back in. And with a game like Injustice, you don't want to just, or not you don't, but a lot of people, and I certainly wouldn't want to just restart and sort of call that first, however many hours I put into it wasted time and go, I'm going to start fresh now and sort of work my way back up again, and then I'll understand this sort of new stuff in context.
Right.
You just want to keep playing from where you left off.
Right.
Because you've built stuff up. That's the whole point of the game, is to grind and to get more stuff.
It's the two parts, right? It's the accumulation collecting part and the fighting strategy. Yeah. And if you collect it, they've set it up in a way so that, with the exception of promoting your guys too far, most of the time, whatever you've put in, if you start over, you have to put in all that time again. And there's not a lot of shortcuts to get where you are. Yeah.
So Cameron saw a gap, right, in knowledge about gears.
Right.
I don't understand this. I bet there's a shortcut to getting it a little bit better. Maybe somebody else can help me.
Right.
And then you were aware of our channel, you found our stuff and said, oh, this is what I wanted. This is the resource that I needed to make it a little bit easier. And so this is kind of the sense that I would get of why a new player might find us, is that I feel like there is so much stuff that you want to have somebody there to guide your experience a little bit and make it better. And so this is kind of a balance of things, because Cameron played it, when it was simpler, but not actively through all the stages of complexity. So when you come back to it, you're coming to, a lot of new stuff. There's sort of a new layer on top of the game that you're familiar with. Right. And
there are frames in the film that are missing. It's like a really big jump cut.
Yeah.
And it's easier. It was easier for us, I think, because we just played it continuously.
Yeah.
Continually. There's a difference. Continuously is nonstop every single moment. Continually is sort of regularly. All right, so we played it continually.
Yeah.
For years with each progression and each addition, and I think that made it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, because when Gears first came out, nobody knew what to do.
Yeah, except for the hackers who maxed out the gears and then some.
Yeah, so everybody was, theory crafting, and when Gears first came out, I remember talking with my friends who played Injustice and going, oh, you can put this gear on this person, and that would probably be really good, and sort of making your wish list of what gears you wanted to upgrade so that, you would have the team you imagined in your head as soon as possible.
I would like to take credit for this. I mean, this is our oral history, and the proof is, I guess, gone with the passage of time, because back then you could see what happened, but I remember being the first ones to say, hey, when the assassin the knives,
League of Assassins
knives was there for splash damage of 50%, and Cloak of Destiny, when they came out, we saw the potential in that on Batgirl easily. Like, that was, to me, and when it actually worked the way we expected it to, when we were finally, because it was announced that the cloak was coming, and it was in the game, but it hadn't been the week where it was going to be.
Yeah, it wasn't like available yet.
Right. And I thought, that is going to be amazing.
Okay, so you're taking credit for that.
I am totally taking credit for it, because I remember how satisfying it was to realize it really does work the way we expected.
You're not necessarily the only person with that thought, but you are, to your knowledge, the first person to say it in a public forum.
Exactly.
In a place and that's really, saved
really,
for posterity.
Yeah, right. And commit to it in a way to say, hey, this is going to be really cool if it works like this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think I got a little bit more of sort of an insight into how people came and found us, and I think it was a balance of stuff. I think people who have been around for longer didn't feel like they were missing something, but I think there definitely is, what I suspected is certain layers of complexity sort of made people feel like there had to be some way of getting this information easier than just figuring it all out yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's probably a good place to end this week. Unless you have any, do you have
I
any
think there's probably something that's just only because it's relevant and timely to actually address it.
Okay, we can do that one then. So this is from Neil Infante, and they say, can someone help? My game has the message, some resources of Play Store are unavailable, and I can't play Phantom Zone, the challenges. many items on the shop disappeared. I've contacted Warner Brothers and Play Store, but both just tell me that it's the other one that can solve it.
Okay, so I should probably make a note of this. We're going to be answering this around the 35-minute mark.
Yeah.
And so the actual message in Android is, Injustice requires one or more Google Play services that are not currently available. Please contact the developer for assistance.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. It is a glitch. It's happened before. It's when Google updates their software, there's an incompatibility with Injustice as it is. And until Injustice is updated, and so it was updated a couple years ago, 3 years ago maybe, with a bug fix with no new content, that message will still keep showing up. You will not be able to log into your Google Play account through Injustice. And that's it. This is universal for Android. So here's the thing. We're still getting all our challenges, and we're getting Phantom Zone, and we're getting store items. So what you're experiencing is actually two different problems. At least two different problems. So you've got the problem everybody's got with Android and Google Play. You've also got when your challenges don't show up and your Phantom Zone doesn't show up when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
We have theorized, and we haven't seen anything to prove us wrong. It's that when you do shifts in your calendar or your clock or both, and you do it while you are connected to the internet and to the server, it breaks something so that it no longer registers properly. Potential solution may be to correct your clock, correct your calendar, uninstall it, and reinstall it as long as you've got your Warner Brothers ID, WBID updated properly, and then you'll get all your stuff back with the events happening. I'm not sure that it does. And with the stuff not showing up in your store, that's your internet connection. That means your connection to the server is not very good. And that can also affect, the other thing you might be experiencing is that your survivor rewards aren't progressing through properly, and you might be just getting the default Suicide Squad gears. So, yeah, there's lots of trouble without actually knowing what's happening with you. Like looking at your account, it'd be impossible to be able to tell what the problem is, but you are experiencing more than just the problem that everybody else is.
So there we go. That's maybe the start on your journey of fixing it. That's a couple different things you can look at to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. So there we go. And that's where we'll end it off for this week.
And maybe we'll just have a little bit of video only because in order to finish the 5 ultimates with this team, enjoy the rest of it after we finish talking. It's still lots of fun. And you can see some of the, even if we're not explaining it, you can see some of the strategies that we're taking with this particular team.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza Dobby in a Glue Trap Caton. She is working through the unimaginable. And this is a reference...
Hamilton?
Yeah, that's part of it. This is a reference to a meme that is like relatively incomprehensible even with full context. It's so I'm just gonna maybe, instead of explaining it all here, let people Google Dobby in a glue trap if you want that sort of context to understand it. Because I'm pretty sure this is one of those memes that if I just say the elements out loud, it's not going to be very funny.
Okay.
Even though I find it personally very entertaining. So I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer if you don't have that context already. And fair warning, you might not find it very entertaining if you do. I don't know what resources explaining it exists.
So Dobby I know is Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Unimaginable, the way it sounds, it feels like a Hamilton
It is
thing.
the Hamilton lyric.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, and we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely supporters on Patreon.
That would be Korey Ashcraft, supporting us at the highest tier, Last Word, Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi 127, and Drew Chapman, who are supporting us on the credited level. And you're going to see another longish list of names of people who have been kind enough and generous enough to have supported us at some point during this pandemic.
For what it's a list of, it feels long to us.
Yes.
Even if for a lot of content creators, that would not be a long Patreon list.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.